University of Washington Taiwan Studies Program Annual Spring Colloquium. And this is kind of a celebratory event where we invite our kind of graduating students to present on their research on Taiwan. And before we get started with that, I'd like to introduce a couple honored guests today. And the first is our local friend from the TICO office. Director Wang Weizan is here, and I'd like to introduce him. And then we have a special guest who's coming from a very distant place in Taiwan, and this is Jiang Liangmin. He's Vice Minister for the Overseas Community Affairs for the Republic of China and Taiwan. So these gentlemen have a very busy schedule. They're not in Seattle very long, so we're going to excuse them from the presentations today. But before, we're going to do a couple minutes of ritual here. We're going to have some photography, and they're going to present some gifts to our presenters. And so I'd like to ask the four presenters to stand up here, and that's Professor Frank Liu. There's Frank is there. Ouyang Ting-Chieh is here. Good. Huiyu is here. Hi. And Euchari is here. So why don't we all kind of come up to the front? We'll see more of these presenters. And please. All right. I'm now going to turn the meeting over to Ellen Zhang, who's going to be the Master of Ceremonies today.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah.
So welcome to our annual Spring Colloquium, and I'm Ellen Zhang, and a lot of you already know me. I'm the Director of Arts and Culture in the program. So today I will be your MC for to introduce everything and also to go over all the events we have put together in this past year. So first of all, I have a big news to announce. We now have a new Taiwan Studies MA degree. It's housed under the East Asia MA program and with the Taiwan track. And our first cohort is coming in, entering fall 2025. And this is the first of its kind in North America. So it's a very big thing. And please spread the word for us. So hopefully we'll have a bigger cohort every year. And then here is an overview of the 2024-2025 academic and arts and culture program events. So we started the year with a book talk with Andrew Lee on haunted modernities. We also hosted a very meaningful workshop, Pioneering Taiwan Studies workshop with scholars who have been working on Taiwan and about Taiwan for a long, long time. And then we have another book talk with Xu Jing on her new publication, Unruly Children, Historical Field Notes and Learning Modernity in a Taiwan Village. Then we have a lot of historian and anthropologists this year with Hu Fangyu on Good Wife, Wise Mother, Educating Han Taiwanese Girl Under Japanese Rule. And another book talk, Revolutionary Taiwan, with Catherine Lila Zhou and Mark Harrison. And we also, of course, Taiwan Studies events always have good food too. So that's one of them. And another book talk with Timothy Young, Colonial Taiwan and the Nature of Japan's Pharmaceutical Industry. And just last month, 2 months ago, we have another book talk with Hong Hong Ting on Island Tinkerers. And a very special talk from Lan Pei Jia from Taiwan on Borders of Identity, Second Generation Multiculturalism and Geopolitics in Taiwan. And we were also very honored to welcome Taiwan's representative to the U.S., Alexander Yu-Da-Lei, to the U.S. campus in April. And we had a conversation with him, and it was moderated by James. Oops. And we also had as part of the all-day conference, Ultra Low Birth Rate and East Asia Crisis Discourses and Collaborative Responses, we had this presentation from Lake Liu, reinstitutionalization of marriage among young people in Taiwan. And just also in April, we had a very, very busy April, as you already know. We had a workshop on Asian indigeneity, resilience, sovereignty, and multiple agencies in Taiwan and beyond. So this was a hybrid workshop, having scholars not only locally in Seattle, but also in Japan and other places. And in May, we had another book talk with a visiting scholar, Li Ze, on situating animal kin in urban infrastructure, 3 stories of the Amis life world and their entangled indigeneity. And one of our most recent book talk is on our very own James Lin and his very recent book, In the Global Vanguard, Agrarian Development and the Making of Modern Taiwan. So those were academic events. And as you already know, we have arts and culture programming as well. So in November last year, we worked with Taiwan Plus to present a pop-up exhibition and also an online film screening called Love Taipei. And in memory of the 228 incident in March, we screened this documentary film called In Search of Mixed Identity. And it was in a collaboration with Tag Seattle. And at that screening, we had the filmmakers in person to do a post-screening Q&A session. And then also in April, we had a double screening on this legendary musician, Chen Minzhang from Taiwan. And it was a collaboration with the Dream Flare Film Festival, and it was at SIF. And also, again, another collaboration with Taiwan Plus and also with TGSA. We had this roundtable discussion on this drama series, Port of Lies. And just very recently, again in April, we have a series of events on the theme of 228 incidents, including exhibition, film screenings, roundtable discussion, and also exhibition tour. And I have some upcoming events to share with you. So in June, we will have an online screening of this documentary film called A Letter to Ama. And in that screening, we'll have a post Q&A with the director, also online. And then following that, we will have a workshop in April to think about this idea of how Taiwan's collective memory can turn into art making. And then very important in June, our Prime Month, is a roundtable discussion with former legislator Yu Mei-Nu, on making Asia's first, the long road to marriage equality in Taiwan. And of course, I hope you will have time to join us at the Pride Parade too. Okay. So for next year, we have many course offering, including James is teaching 3 of them. One is Task Force, Averting War, Taiwan and the U.S.-China Relations, and then an undergrad course on History of Modern Taiwan, and then a graduate version of it, Making Modern Taiwan. And I'm also teaching one of them. It's called Made in Taiwan, Arts and Culture of Contemporary Taiwan. And Yandru is also offering one on environmental issues in East Asia. Okay. So we have some future conferences coming up. In February 2026, there's this conference on new directions in Taiwan history. It's co-hosted by with the Princeton University and the University of California, Berkeley. And we have a very important announcement. Bill, our very own Bill, is retiring this June, and we want to celebrate him. I know we should have some bubbly stuff, but we don't. But so if you have water bottles, anything, we should give him a toast. So we have collected some things to share with you. So without Bill, Taiwan Studies really wouldn't exist, and especially the Taiwan's arts and cultural programming as well. So this is a record of this initiative that really made the Taiwan Studies program happen. And we have him receiving this very big and important gift from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He's over here, but the real person is there, just in case. And we also have a photo of him with all the presenters and participants at the World Congress of Taiwan Studies. And that was right after the COVID, amidst the COVID. And so it was a very challenging one, but we made it it was a very successful event. And the year before, we again was very honored to host at that time Ambassador Saviki, but now the Vice President of Taiwan. So here's a photo of him, and he's right over here. Okay, so are you ready with your water bottles and everything? So can we give a toast? There are some bottles there and drinks there too if you want to grab something. Okay, I'm gonna have my imaginary cup here. Are you ready? Thank you, Bill, and congratulations. So if you want to stay tuned to all our Taiwan Studies events, here are some QR codes for you to scan on Facebook, not Twitter. What is the new name? X, sorry, and Instagram and YouTube. So, and you can always sign up for our newsletter. Did I start?
I don't know.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's not you.
Okay, and now we are going to get into the most important part of today's event, that is our presentations. So we have 4 presenters today, and each of them will share their research with us for about 10 to 12 minutes. And so I will introduce them one by one before their presentation, and we'll keep all the Q&A to the very end of today's event. So, okay. And just a reminder, I will be a very strict timer because we are running on a very tight schedule. Okay, so this is, so the first presenter, yes, you are the first. Sorry, I think this is a surprise, right? But yes, you are the first. So Professor Cheng-Shan Liu is a professor at the Institute of Political Science, National Chong-Shan University, Taiwan, and he's a Fulbright senior scholar visiting Ohio State University from 2024 to 2025. His primary teaching and research area includes Taiwan's politics, comparative politics, public opinion, and electoral behavior and methodology. Welcome.
My name is Cheng-Shan Liu, Liu Cheng-Shan, Frank Liu, from Chong-Shan University, 在高雄的，不是广州那个。但我 I just feel like speaking Mandarin this moment, but I want to say that 我是今天是来插花的。That's using that is in Mandarin Chinese is probably easier. I mean, accidentally, I've been incorporated in this program. Feel very honored because I volunteer to visit the campus to show my thankfulness to James for his support when I was applying for the Fulbright scholarship. So with his support, I feel the confidence to continue. So I came here just to say thank you, but he very kindly arranged me to this event. So I feel very, very proud and very honored and warmed to present the stuff I prepared many years ago, but now updated for this event. Now the newest one and the newest perspectives presenting to you. I was told seriously that I only have 10 minutes. So I'm starting now. So, but I was straight to the point because I didn't think I was the first one to present. I thought this is a serious topic, should be saved to later when everybody feels in the mood of living. So with good friends here, with Yize and Mark here, I also want to show that this is Taiwan's perspective. And in the presentation, I represent no political party, and with no probably very independent argument present to you, and probably uncomfortable facts that are worth of the digesting for a couple of weeks. So let's go. Title is quite updated to Tong-Du dilemma. Everybody here probably know this idea of the China's trying to say the reunification or unification. And Taiwan says we are sovereignty, we want independence. But that is our general daily language. The issue is that we think that is in opposite concepts to each other, and that's been there for decades. When I was looking the survey data, I could not believe my eyes, what I saw. This is what I'm going to present to you. Okay, I hit this. And what I'm saying actually is publishing in Chinese version of the idea. So for your, if you are interested in Chinese version of the talk, yeah, this is the link I would send to you. 2 slides that they probably already know that the whole world has been, attention has been on Taiwan, is about the security, if Taiwan will be annexed. This is the February in cover of the Foreign Affairs, which is the top journal for the policymakers. And they're worried about Taiwan will be the last end, the last domino that causing the war chaos. This is the worry. I think that everybody's thinking about, oh, the unification is going to happen. Taiwan probably claimed independence. But that's a trap. I mean, for Western journalists, they think that way. But from today's point of view, the talks, we don't think that way. Same ideology or same language or rhetorics go this way, because Taiwan is between United States and China. So it's going to be like a sandwich crunched. This is the cover of this month's Economist. So this has been talked a lot in political policymakers. And usually people refer to this kind of graph that my colleagues in Taiwan are very familiar with. This is the survey made by Cheng-Chieh University, showing that the green line shows there are more and more people claim Taiwanese. Okay, and I cannot go detail. I will come back if necessary. More and more people go, probably 60% now, claim them I'm purely Taiwanese. Okay, this is the fact. This is the fact. From the 1992 to today, it goes to the 60s. And then the journalists will come to a conclusion that using the next graph, this is the independent unification graph, the survey shows here, the green line again, going up for independence. And then have the conclusion that, oh, Taiwan is going to have their own revolutionary ideology. But if you look closer to these 2 survey results, the second line, the purple one, is not Chinese identification, it is both. There are 1/3 of people, 30%, thinking that I'm both. But few of us thinking about what does mean the both, Taiwanese and Chinese. And this part usually ignored. Similarly, when there's a graph showing the independence and the unification, we usually look at probably the world journalists, especially United States scholars, will say, Taiwan is putting itself in a dangerous place. So, but there's a more concern about, ignored it, about who is there. Status quo, and we decide later. The black line remains very high. And this is some message that be ignored, because people who say status quo hasn't been answered very well by scholars. My colleagues in political science never been able to answer who supporting status quo, who are they? Today, I cannot answer that question either, but I'm going to show you some facts that totally opposite to this spectrum. Everybody, including me, hardly escape from this spectrum ideology. I mean, if you are pro-unification, then definitely I'm status quo or independence. We put this, we think other people thinking this way. And the CCP is Communist China, right? They say, let's punish independence and DPP. You know how to translate it. This is what the cover shows. And the DPP says, let's punish unification and KMT. I mean, this simplified the translation, okay? And the KMT now saying that let's punish DPP. So let's play the game, right? What is the logic ends? So Kuomintang now sounds like a CCP. That's what's happening because the 大罢免 is coming. Okay, so this is what's happening in Taiwan and people trying to get mobilized. I'm using the data over years. I skip those technical part, but straight to the point, just let everybody know that the survey data is quite representative. It's not by myself, not only by myself using web panel, but using some representative telephone survey, especially face-to-face survey in Taiwan. Before we go to the result, let's show these 2 slides showing how complicated it is. Taiwanese who should establish its own country. That's 10 years ago, before the sunflower movement. More and more people, I mean, from the disagree to agree. Now you can see the majority showing that we want a country. But at the same time, they are also proud of ROC. The same group of people, same survey. How do you explain that? Right? Because if you use the sovereignty as a concept, you probably know what does that mean. Only Taiwanese people know what that means. This is probably the dual identity or dual feeling, but this is actually overlapping or contradicting idea in our head. Now go to the result. The survey techniques can be detailed for hours, but let's look at this basic idea. If we put a survey question, usually from the quick unification to quick independence, we probably will see this is kind of line, a spectrum. Usually survey data with a very good quality, they will line up like this. That means the survey replicates the true idea. Yes and no, they're on the same idea. But independence and unification idea cross 10 concepts. They never line up. So when we ask you a question, you answer the telephone survey, say, for the Taiwan relationship with China, which one you prefer? With that question, they give you 7 or 5 questions, then you pick up one. And that question is not internally consistent. This is for unification, this is for independence, this is for status quo. You don't see the consistency. Similarly, you see for Taiwanese, for Chinese on the upside, but the status quo somewhere else. I mean, both Taiwanese and Chinese is somewhere else. Let's look at another, because time is up. If you use that different data set, you see the same pattern across the board. So I don't need to repeat too much. In the phone data set, 2015, in the block, where other questions line up, showing the internal consistency, the unification independence doesn't show that. I would say this is the problem of designer. The problem of survey question designer is falling into the trap of the spectrum. We continue to the newer data, same pattern. This is both Taiwanese and Chinese. And this is Taiwanese. On the opposite side is not Chinese. On the upside is both. So today, when we say, if you're on the street asking a person, say, what's your identity? I mean, ethnics or national. I'm both Taiwanese and Chinese. I would predict this person has a different political party identification. So while Taiwanese and Chinese are not on the same spectrum, unification and independence not either. So this is the newest one. I present to you the same pattern within the hot data released this year. So look again. We hardly be rephrasing our language when this is broken. With this fact, implication for this is take-home message. This is a false fact that haven't been seen in the political science literature. For the Beijing, okay, yeah, I time out. For the Beijing, for the Washington, for Taiwan, there's a message for you. But I think this is for weeks of digesting, right? So I can speak this part. We talk about later in the Q&A. Well, thank you so much for this time. Thank you.
We have Ouyang Ting-Chieh. Sorry, I know the order is again another surprise. So just a head up, the next one is Huiyu, and then we have Euchari. Okay. Ouyang Ting-Chieh is a Ph.D. candidate in the history department, specializing in Chinese cartographical history in the late 19th and early 20th century. He is also a YouTube content creator of 历史卫视 History Channel. And his title of his presentation today is How to Tell the History of Taiwan Under Qing Rule on YouTube. Welcome.
Hi, this is Ting-Chieh. I'm from History Department, and thanks for the introduction. And I'm going just to read the speech script, otherwise I was just rambling. So I want to thank Bill and James, who is not here, and Taiwan Studies Program for giving me this opportunity to start to share these public-facing projects I've been working on through YouTube. And you can see in the image in this slide, the background features a pre-modern map. This is actually a map of 18th century Taiwan frontier, published by the Institute of Taiwan History at Academia Sinica. It's titled 直线藩界, or translated as the purple line of the barbarian border, quote unquote. This map is significant because it's not a map of entire island, but a map of a boundary. It is a map that the Manchu court in Beijing to instruct the Han settler on the western coast not to cross the line, because the lands beyond were reserved for the so-called raw barbarian Senfan. That is part of the indigenous peoples of Taiwan. In this sense, this map reflects not just geography, but power, showing how the Qing state attempted to contain Han expansions while the Han settler still made aggression into the indigenous territories. And it's the history of the Han settler expansion that forms the core theme of this video series I produced on my YouTube channel. As introduction mentioned, this topic, Taiwan under Qing rule, isn't actually my dissertation focus. It's more of a side project I've been working on. So I started this YouTube channel back in July 2022, right after I passed my general exam and became a PhD candidate. And just like many graduate students, PhD students, after you get your candidacy, you want to do everything but writing dissertations. That was me. And but at the same time, I was also getting a bit anxious about the academic job market. So I thought it'd be good to try something different. And that's how the channel got started. And so far, this channel got not bad reactions and has accumulated 120,000 subscribers. And this year, since last year, I have launched a new video series focusing on the institution of the so-called barbarian border, Fanjie, in Taiwan under Qing rule. And I use historical maps, illustration, and other visual materials to tell the story of how Han settler
因为当时安理社一般人民的经验我们所知甚少，但或许我们能从留在中部
focuses on the 19th century. I've started working on the first episode and plan to publish it next week. And I'm thinking that I will make about 4 episodes in total and covering the Mudan incidents or the Mudan事件 in Mandarin, or in Japanese, Taiwan Shuhei or Taiwan Jiken, and all the way to the late Qing policy of the so-called opening mountains and the pacifying the barbarian, Kaisan Fufan, in the late 1800s. Besides the Chinese-speaking channel, I received fundings from the Taiwan Studies programs and the Simpson Center at UW. With their support, I will also start developing the English version of the channel. The first series I plan to translate is this barbarian border one. Now I want to share a little bit about what kind of material I use in the video. So I really want to take advantage of the visual stuff on YouTube. So I use a lot of maps, illustration, and now even the audio elements in the new series. Take this map for instance. It's one I mentioned early from the first slide, Zixian Fanjie collection. I use it to show how Han settler expanded their territory. But the key question is, how can I visualize the expansion? Right? Here's just one example. So this part of the map shows the central Taiwan, and you can see Jijisan over here. This is what now today's Nantou County. I'm not going to go into the detail of all the details and symbols on this map. Honestly, if I were teaching a seminar on the Qing era Taiwan, I could probably spend like half the quarter just working on these maps. It's very fascinating. But unfortunately, that's the only one thing I can focus today. You can notice there's the phrase "Qingken" over here, and over here. It's actually all the way throughout the maps, and it actually can translate it as application to cultivation, cultivate the land. What it shows is that the Han settlers were applying to the local government for permission to farm their lands in this area. And that's important because it shows how colonial expansions in Qing era Taiwan work differently from the Western experiences. In the West, empires often encourage their people to go settle overseas colonies or lands of no man, quote unquote, beyond the border. But in the Qing case, it was almost the opposite. The Qing court didn't actively encourage immigration to Taiwan. If you were a Han settler who just moved in and wanted to farm a land or on or beyond the border, you had to go through application process, which means that you have to do application to the government. Once you got the government approval and a license, would the area be marked on the map as a Qingken? There's just a lot more to say about this, but I don't have time to go deeper today. So if you're interested, definitely go check out my new series on the channel. All right, I don't think I have a lot of time, so I'm just skip the next 3 slides. Now I just want to show a little bit my new experiment. This is actually audio elements. It is a song I use to show how indigenous communities, specifically NSYSU in the central Taiwan, responded to Han settlers' expansion in the early 19th century. And you will hear my narration in Chinese along with the subtitle from the colonial original language of Bazaizu. And I've added the English subtitle to make it easier to follow.
关于当时安理社一般人民的经验，我们所知甚少。但或许当时安理社一般人民的经验，我们所知甚少。但或许我们能从留在中部的安理社的社众流传下来的歌谣中略知一二。这是由台湾语言学家李仁轨李院士在2002年所收集出版的安理社歌曲。这是泛滥后人民分居之歌，讲述了安理社社众在19世纪初分居的故事。
Since I don't have much time, I'm going to skip some part of it.
首歌讲的是有一对兄弟，他出妈妈网与他妈妈网在桥上分手的情节。歌名里的泛滥，或许未必真的是泛滥，可能是各种危机的隐喻。两兄弟本来要穿过这座桥，Husky Union Building，就是往东北边去，但他从桥上滑了下来，还在桥上的塔图要踏上，但他拒绝了，于是塔图继续往东北方向去。在歌词里说的塔图马哈大口，也就是变成生饭，但留下来的另外一位兄弟。马哈渡口变成了一种路，还不是一般种树的大路，而是比较小的一种路，上路。这个意象非常值得玩味。往东北边继续前行的塔布，如同跨出分界，往东北边噶玛兰地区前行的潘兴文，也成了所谓的生饭。但是留下来的另外一位兄弟，他成了张路，而这种路在台湾灭绝的时间大概也是在这个时间。换句话说，一位兄弟往东北成了生饭，但另外一位留下来的兄弟成了待宰的张路。这首歌讲述的是19世纪初，面对汉人殖民者来势汹汹的安理社人所面临的人族群，要么留下来被驯化，要么往东北者再次成为生饭。这在19世纪初时，不只是安理社，可能也是整个熟番部落的悲歌。
Okay. So this is pretty much like this. I don't think I have much time of 2 minutes. Yeah. So this kind of the things I use. This is actually from the there's a research fellow Li Rengui from the Academia Sinica. He's a linguist, very honorary linguist, and he have this collection of the Bazaizus song, and I use it to show the kind of the experience of the Anlise. And I want to, you see, I really like the visual thing. So even this audio thing, I use the like a visual spectrum to kind of show the shape of the voices. And I think that's also for me. And I will just stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So next we have Huiyu Lin. She just earned her Ph.D. in educational psychology at the UW College of Education. Her research focuses on Indigenous language reclamation and its association with Indigenous educational sovereignty. Today, she will share her dissertation study where she works with the Zhou Saviki tribal community to understand an Indigenous-led educational program that sustains the Zhou cultural and linguistic practices. Welcome.
Thank you, Ellen, for the introduction. Okay. Thank you to the Taiwan Studies program. I'm very honored today to be able to share my dissertation study with you all. The study is titled Indigenous Language Teaching and Learning Practices in the Zhou Saviki Tribal Classroom in Taiwan. As you can see here in the title, both Zhou, C-O-U, and Chao, T-S-O-U, refer to the same indigenous group in Taiwan. However, sorry, I walk around. However, from my work with the community, I have learned that the community, the Zhou, C-O-U, is a name that a community member used to refer to themselves and is their preferred term. I have been using this preferred term throughout my dissertation study, and today I will be doing the same thing, just to emphasize the importance of self-identity and autonomy. Before we move on, I also want to share this title page. This is a picture drawn by a Saviki artist, Danivu, who is also a prior tribal classroom student. I found it really meaningful to use this picture as an opening for my presentations today, and I'm also very grateful to have the permission from her to use it. Oh, wonderful. So as I just mentioned, my study is situated in the Zhou Saviki tribal classroom. This is a emergent Zhou language and cultural learning spaces. It's an after-school program. It's community-based, indigenous-led, and funded in 2002 by a group of Zhou mothers to encourage their Oogo, their students, to Boazhou, to speak Zhou language. Today, they have served students in the community from age 7 to 12. And Since the summer of 2022, I have been working closely with Ms. Zhuang and other classroom teachers and the community members just to really understand the classroom practice. And these practices has shown me that how the community member, they perceive the language and culture very closely connected, and then how this process of learning language and culture is actually everyday life. In other words, there is no standardized curriculum or lesson plan. Whatever is taught is highly depending on what is available in the context. As you can see in the pictures here, teaching and learning happens everywhere in the community. You can see the student, they can be walking on the way to the waterfalls and then learning about the plants, the animals in the land. They can also be harvesting the vegetables in the community seasonal garden. So a little bit more context about the Zou people and the community. So the Zou people is one Austronesian language speaking group in Taiwan. They are mainly located in Jiayi and Nantou counties. Today, the total population of the Zou people is around 6,700 people, with about half of them living in the urban areas across Taiwan due to urbanization and relocation. Yeah, so there are two main settlements, also known as Hosa. Yeah, breaking down to 11 tribal villages. Yeah, and the Saviki tribal village is one of them. It's right there. The Saviki tribal village is home to Danaigu. Danaigu is a well-known touristy destination in Taiwan. It is also known as the Mother River. It tells the very unique river culture of the Zou people, where they live alongside the mountains and the rivers, maintaining cohesive relationship within their land. Oh, I guess I go too much. And then the Zou Saviki community, they also rebuild their home after Typhoon Marak disaster. Maybe some of you guys probably know about that incident. Yeah, they rebuild their home, and that shows their strength and resilience of the community. This strength and resilience is also evident in their efforts and dedication to sustain or to preserve the Zou language through the tribal classroom, which is the main focus of my study. In order for me to understand their important work, I asked the three research questions. I want to know the meanings and perspectives the Saviki community members and leaders hold regarding to their language and cultural practices. I also want to know the classroom practices, teaching and learning practices. And then lastly, I want to know about the tensions and the opportunities the classroom and the community facing in general. By asking these three research questions, my study tried to present community perspectives in their language and culture and their practices, emphasizing the strength and the agency of an indigenous community, especially in the face of colonial or post-colonial challenges. Today, for the sake of time, I will only present one example of my findings to answer the second research question, specifically about the I want to know about the educators. How do the educators of the tribal classroom hold dear a relational value, and then how they practice it in the classroom, as well as how the students make sense of it. So here comes the findings. Different finding resources have shown that Zou relationality was practiced in the classroom and shaped students' understanding about themselves and their relationship with others. For example, interview data shows that the Zou teachers and the founder in the classroom, they perceive themselves not only as educators, they also perceive themselves as family figure who care about the well-being and the long-term development of their students. For example, you can see this quote here by founder M. He said, in our Zou language, uncles and aunts are referred to as amozoni and inozoni, which means another father or another mother. So in Zou language, amo is father and ino is mother. This is clear. We take on the responsibilities and duties of parents. His use of the Zhou term shows how his belief or his relational value is deeply rooted in these Zhou perspectives of relationships. In practice, he assigned a homework for students to discover the familial relationship, their familial relationship with their peers and their teachers. He said, these students realize that teacher M is like a grandfather or simply another relative. It's a family relationship, not just a clear teacher to student relationship in school. Here in a tribal classroom, a teacher can also be a family member, an elder, or something else. This is also aligned with his relational values. Similarly, in one class I observed, teacher R also emphasize the importance of family or familial and communal relationship in shaping one's identity. She said, when introducing yourself in Zhou, you must introduce your clan/family before introducing your first name. By introducing your family name, you inform others where you come from. This is very important. This is very important. From this quote, it shows that in the Zhou worldview, one's sense of self, your understanding about yourself, is deeply embedded in this broader familial and social framework. So in the same class, teacher R used the Mayasvi ritual ceremony to exemplify this Zhou relationality. She said that in her Tapangu society, that the Mayasvi ritual ceremony requires the participation of all 5 families right here. Yeah. Without the involvement of any of them, this ceremony cannot be taken place. And this idea of Zhou relationality is also taken into heart by the students, as one of the students draw this class into details when asked, what was your favorite class in the tribal classroom? So this student reflect that through this class, she not only learned about how to introduce herself in Zhou, but also learn about how important the relationship between herself and her family and even the whole community. The findings have shown the values that this tribal clans hold, the values of communal identity, the kinship, and even the mutual support within this community. And then now I want to jump into the conclusion. I don't know what happened. Yeah, which I want to emphasize the importance of Indigenous educational sovereignty that stresses Indigenous self-determination on their own education. Although this is an after-school program, the Saviki tribal classroom or the Saviki community that developed this educational program that reflects their own cultural values, and then ensure that their knowledge, their culture, and the tradition can be passed down. Can be passed down. Thank you so much for long-term sustainability. Yeah. So, yeah, this practice is departed from the external or colonial paradigm. It emphasizes the community values and then the indigenous ways of knowing and being. So the Saviki tribal classroom exemplifies the resilience and strength of an indigenous community in reclaiming education as a tool for cultural survival and for self-determination. And of course, for intergenerational empowerment. It is reinforced the idea of education is an act of sovereignty. Yeah, I like to take pictures. Yeah, I know, it's very different. Yeah, every single pictures here tell a story. And I want to express my deepest gratitude to the teachers and the community members, for trusting me and for inviting me into their work and their lives. And my dissertation is a product of collective support and kindness from everyone, and I'm forever grateful for that. And thank you everyone for listening to this. And then Aveveu and Yokyo Wasu. That means, thank you very much in the Zhou language.
So last but not the least, we have Euchari Majors, who is an MA student here at the UW with research interest in Taiwanese migrant worker policies and African diasporic media representation in China. She will be graduating this spring with an MA from the Jackson School of International Studies. And sorry, I forgot to mention her titles, but for this time I remember. So she will be presenting the title of her paper is Blue in a Box, Implications of Taiwan's Devaluation of Blue-Collar Workers.
Okay, let's start the timer. All right. Yes, my name is Euchari Major. I'm very excited to present this. I couldn't have done it without the help of all of my professors and my friends who helped me, write and do the research. And so I'm very excited to present at least a little bit of my research and the sort of the interest that brought me into this. So to start out, my topic is a little bit more about the correlation between policy decisions, newspaper article, sort of story developing of the migrant workers in Taiwan and NGO activism, and looking at the way that these three specific narratives around migrant workers correlate. And I came to this sort of an idea because I looked at previous research, looking at on blue collar workers, specifically migrant blue collar workers, thanks to a class that I took with James way back in the day, a couple years ago, in which we read a book by Professor Lan Peijia, and I was very happy to have met her just about a month or so ago when she came to present her other work. But the work that we did read of hers looked at sort of the resiliency of domestic workers in the early 2000s, and it was a very humorous book. And I was sort of inspired by the topics that she discussed, and I was like, well, I wanted to do a bit of a sort of not a continuation, but at the very least a research on the migrant workers from an outside perspective, knowing that I did not have the ability to go over and do personal ethnographic research myself. So I was looking at a couple of different possibilities around this topic, and I wanted to examine the correlation between policy and NGO activism and news media representations of these blue-collar migrant workers, which from sort of a thematic analysis. So I focus specifically on non-governmental organization work because it has become much more robust in the past 10 or 20 years, much more visible thanks to Facebook, thanks to a lot of news, thanks to a lot more representation of migrant workers in the media, thanks to NGO activism. I look at government policy because government policy shapes the ability for these blue migrant workers to move in and out of Taiwan easily and develop their own sense of self and their ability to stay within Taiwan for an extended period of time. And I look at media coverage because media coverage looks at these migrant workers from a different perspective than government and government and NGO workers specifically. So I have a big interest in sort of migration theory, which I sort of define thanks to Enrenfield's definition, which is conceptualizing and explaining migratory processes that acknowledge migration as unbound, as a firm dichotomy between sedentary and migrant practices. And I use this framework to analyze how blue-collar workers are able to move in and out of a space through the governmental restrictions placed upon them due to the policy constraints in the past 10 years or so. In feminist theory, I look at in a subsection of my research on blue-collar workers by analyzing how the problematic construction of migrant blue-collar workers as a category sort of constrains a dialogue between genders, between, for instance, the care workers who are categorized under a blue-collar framework and the industry workers who have very different constraints upon their workforce. So looking at these, I sort of made this broader thematic argument where I basically said that the differential treatment of Taiwanese blue-collar migrant workers enacted through a systematic lack of support in the legislative, domestic, and legal spheres disvalues and undermines their contributions, highlighting governmental neglect of a sector that significantly contributes to Taiwanese labor force. So I'm just going to look at like two main findings throughout my preliminary research in this topic, which I admit is broad, but I wanted to sort of get a thematic analysis because it correlated a lot of different things that hadn't been discussed more recently. And so I wanted to look at this through sort of two different examples. The first example is between white collar and blue collar preferential treatment in media. And so in media, there has been a lot of push in Taiwan to get more white collar workers into the country. And so a lot of media representation is trying to insist on more white collar workers coming into Taiwan, and a lot of governmental policies have supported many of the white collar workers through easy access to citizenship, through ease of naturalization. They've been expressly provided access to legal and translation services, and they have direct hiring to their employers. In contrast, blue collar migrant workers in Taiwan are not easily able to become naturalized because of a financial requirement. And they also have only been allowed access to the same rights to legal and translation services through NGO work, for example. And so these things I found in my research on through looking at the disparities between policy and NGO work, bringing up the misconceptions between policy preferring white collar workers, but accidentally disvaluing blue collar workers. And so looking at this through sort of a theory framework, through a migrant theory framework, I sort of came to the conclusion that Taiwan's preferential treatment of these white collar workers constrains the stability and mobility of blue collar workers, which do make up the majority of Taiwanese foreign workforce, which as of 2024 was at 60% for foreign workers who were blue collar. I do not know the exact number of white collar foreign workers, but the blue collar number is fairly significant. And my second sort of analysis focused on the constraints of the category of blue collar workers, in that both industrial work and care work are categorized under blue collar jobs under the Ministry of Labor's statistical data. However, the labor laws for both industry workers, which is in a blue collar category, and care work, which is also in a blue collar category, have vastly different stipulations. So industry workers are able to change employers with very few restrictions. Compare this to care workers, who are primarily female, and they have very strict contract. They're very strictly tied to their own family employer, and they have a lot of difficulty changing employers due to the nature of their work. And so through some of this analysis, I sort of argued that when looking at the categorization of blue collar workers using industry and care work under the same category, but delineating them to different labor laws, Taiwan's categorizations of care work as blue collar work, while restricting access to services, unintentionally creates gendered policies that do devalue the larger category of blue collar workers. And I recognize that these two larger frameworks are a bit difficult to sort of combine in a very large Taiwan framework, but sort of one of the basic foundational conclusions that I found in the preliminary aspects of this work looked at and argued that Taiwan prioritizes white collar workers by allowing them access to government and health services, easy naturalization processes, and individualized movement. But through this preferential treatment, it unintentionally ostracizes a larger section of foreign workers on the island, the blue collar workers, especially through these gender policy decisions. Even with the positive changes that have occurred in the last 10 years, it continues to disvalue and undermine blue collar contributions, highlighting governmental neglect of a vital sector in Taiwan's labor force. And I believe we are at time, so thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you so much for all of these fascinating presentations that basically touch on Taiwan's 5 major ethnic groups in your own very special approach. And so we're now going to move on to Q&A. So I'm going to invite our presenters to the front. Okay, we're good. So I'm going to open the floor to our audience to take questions or comments that you have for our presenters. And if you guys want to ask questions to each other, you're totally welcome to. Okay. Yeah, please. Oh, sorry to interrupt. Please shout so that the audience online can hear you too. No, it's okay. You should be able to just like speak in a louder voice. That should work. Oh, and I can repeat the questions too.
I have a question for Ouyang. So I'm also very curious about all those historical maps. So who owns the copyright of those maps? If you share them on YouTube channel? And the second question is, what kind of feedback do you get from the audience so far?
So, so the question is about those historical maps, like who owns the property rights, and also the feedbacks you get from your YouTube channels.
Thank you for the question. About the copyright, this is actually kind of complicated because some maps, there's actually 4 maps, actually 3 maps. There's a purple line, there's a blue line, there's a red line. And I think the first 2, the red line and the red line and blue line were preserved in the academic Sinica, so they have the copyright. But the purple line was actually preserved in, I think, China, in Xi'an, in Shanxi province. So somehow the maps were preserved there, but they have a collaboration between the Taiwan academic Sinica with the China's university. So I think in probably 10 years ago, Taiwan Institutes of the academic Sinica, they just published it. So I'm not sure that now the copyright belongs to whom. So I think everyone can use it because it's an open publication, right? But I think still they have there's one Wing maps, which is created in the late Channel period, probably 70s, 90s. But scholars still haven't really discovered that. So about the second question, the reactions from the audience, it's quite controversial. One thing is, lots of people don't think, I don't know how to say it, because I use this term, Han settlers. So lots of people don't think that there's a right way to characterize them. And actually, I got a lot of inspiration. I read a lot of Taiwanese historians' work, especially like Ke Zhimin from the Institute of Sociology, and he has a very important books on this Fanjie problems. And but one of the things about the settler colonialism is the inspiration I got from is when I was first TA at UW, is actually the course of the race and American history. And I read like Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, her book on the settler colonialism in the U.S. So that's where I got this inspiration about this notion about settlers. And I don't think this theory about settler colonialism is still, I don't think lots of people know it in Taiwan, so lots of people just don't agree with it. So, but yeah, I think it's quite controversial to use that term, but I think it quite makes sense. And I want to really use this theory to see the 18th and 19th century Taiwan histories and how the indigenous territories got shrunk during the process. So that's what my goal. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Okay, thank you all the presenters. They are wonderful findouts for current Taiwan situation. I have one question for Professor Liu and one question for Major. For Professor Liu, it's quite interesting to see the counterintuitive the result that we are thinking non-unification should be independent, but you are identifying there might be some other differences in between. Is there any policy, because these are statistically from the surveys, is there any policy orientations that the current administration are targeting toward the result of these surveys in order to, make a difference of the possible future outcomes? I'm just wondering how is the governmental reaction. You probably compare the current one with the previous admission about the surveys, what they think about that. That's my question for Professor Liu. And for question for majors, actually, I like I also interested in the domestic helper and the migrant worker situation. And I think I would probably have the idea that the media representation of these two different type of migrant workers would hold a lot of difference on the what you call devaluation of these blue collar workers, right? So they are more, I think, as far as from the general understanding, they are more experience relation to the domestic helpers, either hospitals or the domestic elder care situation, rather than the industrial-oriented blue-collar workers. So how do you see the media reflection to the effect of when you are seeing the devaluation of these two different, but majorly are both blue-collar workers? Thank you.
So I'm not going to repeat the question because I was just checking the live stream, and obviously the audience can hear you. So yeah, please go ahead and answer.
How many minutes I have for the $1 million question? Really have to think about that. I try to be brief because this is a very thoughtful question, very deep, and I have to review 3 administrations. It flashed to my head. I would say when you see that fact, it's very uncomfortable to deal with it because the connection doesn't exist. So when we talk about independence, it's just a standalone concept. When you talk about status quo, it's a standalone concept. And the general public doesn't refer that to rejecting unification or not. So it must be referred to something else that hasn't been discovered. This is what I'm saying. When you say unification is a concept, doesn't respond to anything else, not the opposite of independence. Okay, so this is what I found the facts that deserve time to digest. But to your question about the Taiwan administration, okay, so the implications for you, Washington, D.C., or probably to Beijing is more important. But Taiwan have the experience of 3 party turnover. I would say that in the Kuomintang administrations, it falls the trap. It falls into this spectrum trap by rejecting so-called concept of independence. It continued to have a nationalist ideology, saying that, using that concept, right? Saying that we are the country, then you cannot go that extreme. So it injects the ideology that this spectrum there. So nobody can go extreme. So you can see from Jieyan to the martial law era that's the pattern. And through the DPP's administration, what I thought, because it's not written, it's just a quick response. I have mistakes probably. But DPP must, so far, the Tsai Ing-wen and Lai Ching-te, the administration, we didn't see the term independence, right? It's not in their public speech, which is very wise. Because when you're emphasizing something, the term not used by Beijing, that is not falling into the trap. So far, I haven't seen that trap happening, but there's a lot of but. In the journalists, in our civil public level, we use that term all the time. So even during the campaign, the father of children can fight each other using that term. So the polarization seems happening in the civil public, in families, between generations. They tend to fall into that trap by labeling each other, especially party supporters, labeling each other through the news media or self-broadcasting channels. So this is something I feel comfortable. But from the administrative side, I feel they are wise. I mean, cautious. So if we have time, and everybody probably think about that. I don't need to talk about that, but think about Beijing being benefiting from this spectrum, right? Using the languages, the Tong-Du, right? And this language is borrowed or even appreciated by China's friends. So that is the threat internationally, that this spectrum being used wisely internationally, but not happening in Taiwan. So the world probably have to discover Taiwan's subtleness instead of labeling Taiwan as one side, rejecting a concept. So I think this is the value of what I mean, after the shock, this is what I saw, that Taiwan has a great chance to continue move sophisticatedly and safe, should be safe if we know how to escape the labeling of either side. So I feel lucky in the one time, but worried about the international community who easily using that, borrow their languages to hurt Taiwan. So that's why I think my article should be written in English. So that's what I probably need to do in a couple coming months. Well, thank you for the question.
Okay, so first of all, as a caveat, I did not look at every single news source that's possibly out there that talks about blue-collar workers, blue-collar migrant workers. But I definitely do agree with you that there's a lot more representation in the news media, mostly through the push for NGOs to have more connections with a lot of domestic helpers who are definitely a bit more within the visible eye, both ironically because they have their own small communities in like Taipei, and also ironically because they're in very individualized domestic spheres, but they've definitely been a topic of discussion, a bit more common than blue-collar industry workers. And I think part of this is because industry work tends to be on the fringes in more rural areas without as much discussion. And so I do think that industrialists, that talking about industry is not, it's not quite as widely covered, probably because they're very secluded away from larger urban spaces. I don't necessarily know whether that will change in the future. I do know that of the things that I do talk about those industry workers, it tends to focus on changing regulations and new requirements for better housing for these workers. So you'll see that coming up in news articles a lot about Taoyanshu and whatnot. So I'm not certain if the news media is going to be covering industrial workers more in the future or not. I think it might depend upon activism to try and get better to try and get like better living conditions for these communities. But I do definitely think that one of the reasons why the domestic help has become more visible is because of a lot of NGOs that have been helping out domestic workers from Indonesia and domestic workers from like Vietnam and Thailand, since those communities have definitely gotten more visibility because of NGO work. And that may mean that if more NGO work continues to look at blue-collar industrial workers in the future, that might be more visible. But when it comes to talking about industrial work done by blue-collar migrant workers, they do focus mostly upon numbers and statistical data from the Ministry of Labor instead of looking at individualized sort of issues, with the exception of a couple of very well-known and well-established researchers on the topic. So thank you.
Yes.
I have a question for Euchari. You touched on it a little bit, but first question that came up is what countries source most of these for example, on the blue collar and white collar. Just the top three. And then second of all, I'm assuming that for the blue collar language is not a big issue because they come not knowing the language, but maybe it does limit its opportunities for white collar people. I've worked for many years with immigrant workers and sourcing people out of Eastern Europe. And on the white collar side, there's demand for the IT area and in call centers. So maybe you can answer it from the other side.
Let's see. In terms of white collar workers, they have I don't know the number of the white collar workers that are currently in Taiwan who are from countries. Yeah. I think mostly Japan, Vietnam, and Malaysia. I believe those are the top three. And industry and the blue collar workers tend to be mostly from Indonesia and Vietnam, and Thailand as well. But I'd have to go back and check. But those tend to be more of the ones that are commonly discussed. Although recently there has been more of a push to get white collar workers from India. That started to happen in the mid 2022, but I'm not certain whether their discussions to try and get more Indian white collar workers started to go through or not. It was definitely a hot topic to discuss because of cultural differences when it came to discussing white collar workers. But definitely Japan is one of the top, as is Vietnam and Malaysia, and some of those actually first originally decided to do their education in Taiwan. So they might have gone to Taiwan to get their bachelor's degree or their master's degree, and then continued to stay in Taiwan to work.
Yeah, but for the white collar, what kind of jobs are they likely to take?
That's actually something that I don't know as much. It is something that is lacking in my research, but I do believe that it does have to deal with definitely AI production and a lot of IT work. Since but that's based on my cursory understanding. I have not delved in deeply.
I'm thinking otherwise, language would vary.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a question. So, you talked about how both local indigenous community shapes elementary education in its own way, and so I see that there's a certain amount of autonomy to schools there. I want to know what the limit of that autonomy is. There is a Ministry of Education, and I think they probably have an agenda, and I want to know, to what extent education is shaped by that agenda, and how are they kind of negotiating between those separate agendas.
Thank you, Bill, Thank you for the question. Yeah. I want to clarify again, the tribal classroom that my research working with is an after-school program. Yes. Yeah. However, it does, in my aspect, it does still imply that idea of sovereignty, right? Like educational sovereignty, because all the content that they are teaching is all about what they want their children to be learning about. It's very different from the mainstream or colonial educational paradigm. So it is still, but for your question, even with that, yeah, it still has its limitation for sure. Like I mentioned at the beginning, it serves students from age 7 to 12. So you might be wondering, so what happened after 12? They won't have this anymore. That is true. They won't have it because those students from the community, they will have to move out of the community to the urban area for further study for their middle school or high school, because in the community, there's no middle school or high school because the uneven resources distribution in Taiwan. There's just no. So they will have to leave. And then, so I remember the conversation with the community member, with the teacher, they mentioned about that. It's a very challenging thing. So that is also going back to how they want the student to get out of the classroom is really like a seed planted into their heart that they will remember. It might sound a little bit like, yes. Yes.
For a student who wants to go on to live in school, do they commute to a school?
They have to boarding school. Yeah. In 99.9% of the cases, yeah, because it's far away. But so for example, the tribal classroom also make it really clear. This is a home for all of the students. So I got to talk to many of the tribal classroom students. They always come on the weekends. They always remember home there waiting for them. They be engaging in cleaning the community, doing community, just stuff to contribute to the community, and then having this sense of, like I say, identity. So the benefits, in addition to cultural learning and language learning, one key thing from my aspect that the travel is really to convey their strong identity, strong Zhou identity, that they always remember where they come from, and they always remember they have this responsibility to sustain their culture and their language, no matter where they are. And they will always remember there's a place there waiting for them. And then I also mentioned, when I was working with the community, I also noticed a lot of young adults after they finish school, right, from college, and then they choose to go back to the community. Even you think about job opportunity in urban area, there is no doubt there are more chances in the urban area, but they decided to go back to their community, to go back to where they are, to continue learning about their own culture and language, and then so in the Saviki community, they are very, like I mentioned, it's a very well-known touristy area. So they, by culture tourism, right? By introducing the culture to outsiders, they also sustain that way of knowing and being, and then also, just to continue this long-term development of their community. Yeah, so I don't know if I answer your question, but
Follow-up with that. I think that's also a very important project because I mean, as you mentioned, it's an after-school curriculum. So
right.
The practice will be very much different from the regular schoolwork. And you mentioned a very important concept in that is a relational, like teaching. So teachers are like fathers and mothers.
Yeah.
How can you, from your observation, is there a possibility to make this relational teaching in the
formal
normal curriculum? How or why not? If there is something like that could happen. And you may also mention when the kids are out, they are coming back to the Saviki, I mean, Danai before. Is there a possibility to extend that relation also in the urban area? It's a comparative, like, imagination. How do we make relationship in the curriculum of the regular teaching in the
urban
rural area itself? And also, can we do that in the urban area if possible?
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful question. I want to say yes and yes. I want to imagine that it will, and actually it is. So, fun fact: the tribal classroom is a street like right across to the elementary school. So the student, after they get off from school, they can just cross the street and walk to the tribal classroom every single day. And then, so what I'm saying that is because I want to say the tribal classroom and then the elementary school, actually they have very close relationship. And then some of the, I would say most of the teachers in the elementary school are actually community members. So actually, what they are doing is very closely. I mean, in school, definitely you need to follow the standardized curriculum, right? You need to teach the mathematics, the literacy, Chinese literacy, all of those things. But they engage as much as time. They spray some what classes like music class, for example. They engage the student. I was in there watching the teacher. The teacher is from the community. And then in the music class, what they taught is their ancient songs. So that's what they are doing. They much as even it's in a formal educational setting, they still make sure they have this cultural elements or language element into their teaching. And then they will always ask like aspects or perspectives or from the elders or from the teachers in the tribal classroom when they encounter some like questions about a student and stuff. So they do have very close connection. And then regarding the urban area, as far as I know, the tribal classroom actually they do collaborate with one church in the Chiayi city. So in the urban area, so they do have this close connection. Students can go to the church. Is by the religious institution, but still is a space that they try to create to have this kind of learning still going on. But it does have its limitation, but yeah. So we are exceeding time, I believe. Sorry, too much.
Thank you so much for all these wonderful questions and answers. One thing I hate most being a moderator is I always have to interrupt wonderful conversation like this, but I do welcome you to bring those to our sushi over there. But apologies to the audience online. We are going to stop this live stream, but for those in person, please continue the discussion over food.